Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Git Good at OpenRCT2. In this video, I will show you how to make a good-looking water coaster. Now, you've probably built one of these. You may have built one of these in your game once. In this video, I will be showing you how to make a sort of realistic-looking water coaster. So, yeah, if we would build the station, let's just quickly go over the track a bit. So here we are. I've just built the station. Now for water coasters, usually the station will actually, or the coaster will actually start on the water, and then usually it also finishes in the water. So usually you'll find a little bit of a pond, which the beginning and the end of the coaster sits in. So I will just quickly make an entrance and exit here, but usually this would be where your station building would be. So I'm just going to make some water here. Obviously, it would be up to you to decorate this, just to make it look nice. Maybe some walls around it, and yeah, we'll get to the ending of the coaster later. But yeah, for example, here could be a bit of a water section. Let's do a little S-bend. And then here would be the lift hill. Well, and here then we have the track of the coaster. Now I'm not really sure, but I believe this type of coaster track is based on Curve Splash, something like that. But yeah, nowadays most water coasters are actually built by Mack rides or by Intamin. They both have built quite a few water coasters. So in this video I'll be mostly going over how Mack rides and Intamin built theirs. So you can also try and recreate a water coaster in the same style. Now, yeah, this was just a very quick introduction to these water coasters. Now, how does a water coaster layout typically look? Well, like I already said, station, usually in the water. Sometimes it could immediately start with a lift hill, but typically you will find the boats in the water at the station. Well, there's several styles of lift hills. I'll also go over that later in the video. How does the track of a water coaster typically look? Well, typical water coasters you will find throughout amusement parks typically have a track that is a little bit more beefy than what you see here. The boats are usually quite wide, and typically real water coasters have 4 rails, 2 for the boat to run on, and there's also a few on the side that actually extend over the side of the boat just to keep it down as it travels through eventual airtime hills, stuff like that. But yeah, actually the best way to emulate this water coaster track would be with this hardline twister coaster track. This track really looks perfect for the water coaster. I can actually build some of it here. Now, I will just build it backwards here, because that allows us to keep building chain lift. If we build forwards and downwards, then I would have to select the chain lift while I'm building every track piece. Yeah, blah blah blah. Let's just build this track here. I think this is actually the perfect track for a water coaster. This probably looks the most like what the real water coasters look like. The problem with this track, of course, is that the hardline twister coaster cannot do any curves at all. So yeah, that's why you probably shouldn't use this track. I mean, it does look really great. Maybe you want to use it for lift hills or for straight sections, but obviously you're gonna have a few curves in this track, and then you cannot use it. And if you combine this with any other track in the curves, it would just look weird. So that's why I typically just go with wooden coaster track. I think it's the second best track to use for this. I mean, side friction coaster track could probably also be used, but also it doesn't have any curved drops. So yeah, wooden coaster track probably the way to go for this. So let me just build some wooden coaster track. Now I'm just going to build it slightly under the existing track. So I'll use the cheat allow building track at invalid heights. As you can see, it also nicely aligns with it with this water section. So yeah, this is probably what will look nicest on your coaster. Now, what you should probably also do is actually move the wooden coaster track under the other track with the tile inspector, just so you don't have all these very clunky supports. Now, these supports might also look a little bit too thin, but you can probably make some custom supports if you want, or you can actually keep the wooden coaster supports if you like those. But yeah, this is probably what will look best for your water coaster track. Again, it nicely lines up with these water sections, and yeah, it will just make the track look a little bit more beefy. And now this water coaster track of itself, it doesn't have any banked drops, sadly. So you'll also have to take that into account if you build this, because also these boats don't have any sprites for banked drops. So if you build this track and you use these boats, might be best to just use unbanked curved drops in your design. But yeah, I'll leave that up to you. Maybe you'll want to use a different vehicle for your water coaster, or maybe yeah, if you don't care about the lack of sprites, you can simply just ignore the fact that these coasters don't have the sprites. I mean, maybe people will not notice. Now, if you do want curved or banked drops for your water coaster, obviously you cannot use this track because this track also doesn't have the banked drops. So yeah, maybe right like stand up. Actually, this probably also doesn't have the curved drops. No, big sad. No. I do actually think the stand-up coaster track looks quite nice on this coaster as well. But of course this track doesn't have any water sections. So for the actual water sections, you would have to they become invisible now if we use the stand-up coaster track. So probably the easiest is to then build some splash boats track in the other direction, like this. Of course, for straight sections you'll have to be careful to not merge it with the original track. So for example, here there's a straight track piece of water coaster track. If you put any other straight track on the same tile, well, I guess here it wouldn't merge, but it's always a good thing to be careful of. So for example, right here on this tile, I built some splash boats track. If you want to prevent merging, always put the track you don't want to actually merge it with in the other, put it above the other tile. So for example, we want the trains here to run on the stand-up coaster track. Just put the stand-up coaster track below any other track that's just there for visual purposes. Right, I already covered a lot of information in this video. Now I'm just going to remove this splash boat track, and I'm simply going to continue building this coaster with the water coaster track. Alright, I think this is the best option for this track, but of course feel free to experiment with different track styles for your water coaster. So if we continue like this, with this track combination, you can build your wooden coaster like this. You can build it right under here. You could even try banking your wooden coaster track, somewhat like this. I think this looks quite alright. Alright, so I think your goal for this track should be to make it look beefy. Now, as for the layout of the coaster, typically I think you'll want to have a lift hill, then a bit of maybe a helix, something like that, some interesting track, and then usually you'll want to end with a big splashdown. So some water coasters actually have more than one splashdown. So for example, they could have a bit of a curvy track here and a little splashdown into the water. Usually kind of a relaxing section here. And then finally there's a bigger lift hill, and then they end with the biggest splash. And then after that, the splash will take them back into the station. After a splashdown, just like in log flumes or splash boat rides, just make sure to leave enough room for the boats to actually brake. Or slow down, I mean. You also don't want them to splash down and immediately go into a curve. That would probably be a bad thing to do. That would probably be pretty unsafe. Okay, that's already quite a lot of information probably to take in. What I'm going to do now is simply go over some layouts that would probably be typical of a Mack water coaster. And I'll also do one for an Intamin water coaster. Okay, now for one of these water coasters from Mack rides, we can just start off like we did previously. So first we'll have a little water section. Let's do a little drop here. I'm just going to quickly make a nice layout. So we'll have a little drop here, and here we could have a splash section. So we just go into the water. Let's do a little adventurous or gentle section here. So I'll just do an S-bend. I think this is enough to make the coaster slow down. If it's not, we can extend this section here. Alright, and then here we could have the second lift hill. We'll make it a bit higher. Now, the nice thing about this water coaster is that it actually can do helixes. So that's, I think that will make it look nicer. Here we could have a bit of a section with a helix. We'll have a nice drop here. Here we could have a little airtime hill. And then here would be the final splashdown. Now this is just an example of what a Mack layout could look like. I believe usually their first section is a bit more it's a bit more curvy, it's a bit more complicated than the second section, which is probably typically more about the big splashdown. Could be a little bit of an airtime hill here, but yeah, that's really up to you. So I actually did it the wrong way around. Now here the first section is actually much more simple than the second section. But yeah, this is just an example of how you could do it. Now, and for this section over here, we'll just beef up the track with some of this wooden coaster track. Alright, and then here comes the tedious part. Because for all of these pieces we'll want... that's something I prefer, not to have all these clunky supports under it. But rather I want these more sleek supports. So then for all of these pieces we'll have to move the wooden coaster track above the other track. Well, etc. This is quite tedious. It really helps if you're using some keyboard shortcuts. You can set those in the options, and that will probably make it faster for you to actually move these track elements up or down. And if you hold Control while you're in Tile Inspector, for example, I'm holding Control now. If you now click a track piece, you will immediately select that track piece. So that will make it easier to actually move those track pieces up. For example, if you don't hold Control, then you actually have to click the tile first, then you have to select the track piece and then move it up. But yeah, these shortcuts will actually make it a bit easier. For example, I have moving things up in the list here. I have set that to Control A. So I hold the Control now. I click this track piece. I keep holding Control. Now I press the A button and then it moves up. So that's just a quick way of doing this. But yeah, it's quite tedious, so I'm not going to do it for the rest of the track. But yeah, this is probably what a nice water coaster layout made by Mack rides could look like. Of course, this is just an example. You can make any layout you want, and of course, on sites like rcdb.com, you can find realistic, you can find the real layouts of Mack water coasters. Okay, there's another company which also made quite a few water coasters. That's Intamin, and their layouts are quite different from the ones from Mack rides. By the way, for the previous layout, of course, you should also envision there being water here. But of course, I hope that was already obvious to you. Okay, for an Intamin layout, well, what they have that Mack coasters typically don't is they typically have a vertical lift tower. So I'm just going to quickly make a station here. Typically there will be a little bit of a water section at the beginning until they finally reach the lift tower. The lift tower always starts in the water. You can actually make a little platform under it if you want. Now this lift tower will be quite tricky to actually make. What I will do first is I will first make a vertical lift for the coaster. So for that I will just use vertical drop roller coaster because it has a steep, short steep transition. So let's just go up. Well, we also want to actually have a lift hill here. So I'll do the allow chain lifts on all track pieces cheat. And then we can actually just build a lift hill here. Now that I'm building this, we probably want to have a straight drop out of the lift tower. So what I'm going to do is change it back to water coaster, and I will just make a turnaround here, and then I'll make the lift hill after that. It's not a necessity, but it's just how it will probably work best here in this for this specific layout. Now the height of the tower, yeah, there's water coasters with lots of different heights for the towers. So yeah, you can just use your imagination there. Alright, I'm gonna quickly make this coaster turn around here. Okay, then over here I'm going to build the vertical lift hill. I also built one of these coasters in my mega park. So you can always take a look at that example to see what a ride like this can look like. Alright, well, I've built a water coaster here now. It actually has some steep pieces like this, so I didn't actually know that, but that's good to know. Sorry, it looks like the coaster track actually has sprites for these, so that's pretty cool. Okay, we're gonna have to enable the cheat to, disable the support limits. What you'll want to have here is, you could probably have a steep drop here. So what these Intamin water coasters typically have is a drop down, then they will pass right over the water. So right here is you'll have what I will call a soft splashdown. Now you don't want to use an actual water coaster section here, a water section, because here the coaster will lose a lot of speed, and it will have really big limitations on the rest of your layout. So what you'll want to do here is simply use normal track, because what these rides typically do here is simply just maybe scoop up a little bit of water, and it will make a bit of a splash, but not enough to actually slow down the coaster a lot. So what I like to do is simply use fountains here, like this. Alright, nah, this might be a little bit too much fountain, but I think this does actually look quite like an actual splashdown. Alright, well, I skipped ahead a little bit, but yeah, probably will need to make the actual vertical lift hill tower here. So I will just use, I will just simulate the ride here already, so we can actually see the boats go around here. Like I said, we'll want an actual tower here. For that, I like to use the inverted impulse coaster track, because it obviously it can go vertical. So we'll have to see where we're gonna actually build this. Now this part is quite tricky to get right. You can see an example of this in my mega park, of course. But yeah, you'll want this track to go along the vertical lift hill. You'll want it to look like the coaster train is actually going up in this lift hill. But yeah, it's quite tricky to make this look nice. I'll admit that. Alright, I just played a bit with the track here, and what my goal was here is just to try and make it look a little bit wider here in the middle, and yeah, a bit less wide here at the bottom. But yeah, like I already said, these coasters can be quite tricky to do in this game. But I think this tower looks alright. You could make a little platform under here. I'm just going to quickly build something here. So typically what happens in these coasters is here at the bottom, the coaster cars get guided into an elevator, which take the train up here, and then here the coaster gets put on the track again before it travels down into the first soft splash. But yeah, here is just what I cobbled together in a few minutes. You could make a little platform here, something like this. But yeah, it will often look a little bit weird here. But yeah, I guess that's just something you'll have to live with. Now you could even make this track here invisible and actually put some fake track in place. Let me quickly do that. Alright, now it looks more like this track here is actually connected. I'll also hide this track here and put some water track here. So yeah, now it looks more like it's one track. Now it also looks more like there's an actual elevator here. Now in the real thing, the boats wouldn't actually go almost vertical here. But yeah, there's no way to prevent that here, really. Alright, I think I'm actually quite happy with the way this looks. Of course, yeah, I think you should just try and experiment and try to get this nicer if this is not the effect you want to go for. Alright, now for the rest of the layout, yeah, so first there's a soft splashdown, then after that there's usually some form of helix. So let's just do a large helix down, and maybe a small one, and something like this. Actually, we're going a lot to this side now. And there's usually some form of airtime hill, and then finally there's big splash down at the end. Now, the way I built this now, there's actually a long section to the actual to the station. That's probably not what you want. You'll probably want the coaster to actually end, or the splashdown to be actually somewhat near the station. But yeah, again, this is just an example of how you could build one of these. So on an Intamin water coaster, you'll typically find a vertical lift tower, soft splashdown, helix section or something like that, and then finally a big splashdown before the ride returns back to the station. Now, again, also for these Intamin coasters, the tracks are usually quite beefy. I love that word. And again, it's probably best to use wooden coaster track here. So I'm just going to quickly put some wooden coaster track under the existing track here. Something to remember is to never try to hide supports that are above water by putting the track elements below surface. If you do that, the water surface will get glitchy. So that's definitely something you'll want to prevent. Alright, and there we have our Intamin water coaster layout. Now, like I already mentioned, this last part here is probably too long before it returns back to the station. So yeah, just try to plan ahead a bit and make the final splash a bit closer to the station. Now, of course, Intamin and Mack are not the only companies that make water coasters. There are several other companies which have made them. And of course, you can also just make a fantasy layout and just do it the way you want. In this tutorial, I just simply show you how some of the real water coasters could look, or if you're just trying to go for a realistic layout. Alright, yeah, that was a lot of information. I hope I didn't forget anything. Now, I also hope this tutorial is useful for you. If it was useful for you, please consider giving it a like. It would really help out my YouTube channel. Alright, hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you again in the next one. See you later.